Hi, Blastpop here. Today I am doing a brief look at the Twin Peaks game set from the Great Battles of the American Civil War. The system was designed by Richard Berg. South Mountain is a design by Richard Berg, and the Battle of Cedar Mountain is by designer Greg Laubach. This comes in a 2-inch box. Typical fare for this series of design elements. On the back of the box, you can see a sample of the South Mountain map. And then the background, as well as the sample of the game counters, the complexity, and solitaire suitability. This system is a derivative of and an ancestor of the Terrible Sword system. A standard series rulebook. This comes with a 2014 edition. Comes complete with an index and is black and white print. Some illustrations and examples. It's a fairly dense 2 columns per page rules. It's not difficult, although I have found that I'm preferential system-wise to the old Terrible Sword system. It may not be accurate by today's game design standards, but the fun factor is there. So the rules weigh in at 30 pages for the standard series rules, which also includes the cover. So around 28, 29 pages by the time you get through the fluff and such. Also included are separate fold-out sheets for the various games for both South Mountain and Cedar Mountain. Nice and cleanly printed on a nice cardstock, sort of a semi-gloss. Find something similar here also for the Cedar Mountain game. This being a regimental game system, the values are in combat is done by computing the type of weapon the unit carries with the range to achieve a firepower factor, and then you roll on the fire table, whether it's small arms or artillery, and you get results. And typically they're disorders and step loss, point losses. You keep track of the strength of the increments of the troops, and then you also have shock resolution for those close-in fights. For the South Mountain, you've got a terrain effects chart where all the terrain elevations are, and then a second disorder table. Cedar Mountain has its terrain effects card, and likewise a second disorder table. Places to keep track of the current game turn, activation markers. The system uses activation markers to draw in what order that the forces are going to be activated. Adds an element of surprise, and also adds a certain amount of solitaire suitability for those so inclined. One-sided. South Mountain, similar for the Union forces. South Mountain, again for this time the Confederates, and Cedar Mountain for the Union. There are 4 counter sheets enclosed. The color coding represents the parent formation of the troops to allow for easy activation, and also corresponds to the activation markers. On the back side is the disordered side, and the front side is good order. That first sheet was for the Cedar Mountain. For the South Mountain, has its own sheet of counters. Same format. Also, you have leadership, leaders, colonels, generals, corps commanders, wing commanders, army commanders, and so on. And the second disordered side. They're the thin core variety of the white core. Certainly serviceable. Some activation markers here, but largely we're now into the system markers, step points, strength points for those markers. Fatigue. More system markers. Please pause the video if there's something you'd like to take a look at a little longer and in more detail. The South Mountain's exclusive special rules. 12 pages. You have the particulars for the activation system, stacking and movement, optional rules to include hidden movement or hidden units, engineering, and then you have your scenarios, have your setups, and a bridge sequence of play. Similarly for Cedar Mountain, also 12 pages. It is noted that these rules books have color as opposed to the series rules, which are black and white. Similar format, you have your scenarios, your setups, alternate scenarios. I like the idea of these multi-packs. You have 2 or more games in a pack, allows you to explore more than one battle, and to me seems represent a good value to the gamer. Also included a couple of D10 dice, Ziploc baggies, and this is a sample of the South Mountain map. It's rough terrain, hilly, cliffs, and steep terrain, hard fought over, trails, a very ferocious and hard fought battle historically prior to the Battle of Antietam, where the Confederates attempted to head off the Union troops advancing on the wildly dispersed Confederate army at Antietam. Map is back printed with the other map of the battle included, the Cedar Mountain map. Well, this has a mountain over here, Cedar Mountain. Much of the battle occurs on the flats, or relatively flat areas of the board. Probably a little less challenging in terms of rules overhead and dealing with complex terrain interactions. A muted, nice earth tone series of maps here. And if you have any interest in the Civil War and small unit battles, this system could be for you. Overall, very nice package. I believe it's still available, and if it is, it's been on sale by GMT for a reasonable price for quite some time. So, there you have it. Please comment, like, and subscribe. This has been Blastpop. Bye.